وقتلوا في سبيل الله هنا لا ليس هنا سددنا من
Where are other microphones? This one? No, this is the only one. And the third one? There are three, usually. Okay. Bismillah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم من نفخه ونفسه وحمده بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم واقتلوهم حتى لا تكون فتنة ويكون الدين لله فإن انتهوا فلا عدوان إلا على الظالمين الشهر الحرام بالشهر الحرام والحرمات قصاص فمن اعتدى عليكم فاعتدوا عليه بمثل ما اعتدى عليكم واتقوا الله واعلموا أن الله مع المتقين
نعم.
وأنفقوا في سبيل الله ولا تلقوا بأيديكم إلى التهلكة وأحسنوا إن الله يحب المحسنين.
حسبك. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد. In the name of Allah, the most gracious and the most merciful, may the peace and blessings of Almighty Allah continue to be on the last of His messengers and the seal of His prophets, our leader Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. May the peace and blessings be extended to cover all members of his household as well as all of his companions and anyone that follows their footsteps until the day of resurrection. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to count us among those who will be so successful in both lives. Ameen. Tafsir al-Quran al-Kareem, by the grace of Almighty Allah, this is going to be another session of Tafsir, wherein we read together the words of Almighty Allah and we explain the meanings and try to draw lessons from the verses that are being read. We ask Him as usual that whatever we shall be listening to this evening to make it beneficial to us in this life and in the next one. Allahumma ameen. Today, the starting point is going to be a new verse. And that is verse 194 from the same chapter, Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2 of Al-Quran Al-Kareem. In this verse, Almighty Allah says, الشهر الحرام بالشهر الحرام والحرمات قصاص فمن اعتدى عليكم فاعتدوا عليه بمثل ما اعتدى عليكم واتقوا الله واعلموا أن الله مع المتقين. الشهر الحرام بالشهر الحرام. As we said yesterday, this verse and the two preceding ones are actually addressing the military affairs of Muslims, how we must conduct ourselves even when we happen to be in a battlefield. Again, this is further emphasizing the fact that Islam is a complete way of life. It does not leave anything out. Whether you are a civilian or even you are a military man. And that is what we drew the attention of our brothers and sisters who are in the military services, that you still have to learn what are the teachings of your religion, how you should conduct yourself even when in a battlefield, especially in relation to observance of your religious duties. Being in a war, being in battlefield is not an excuse, for example, for not observing Salat. But there is a specific way of observing Salah that will not take anything for granted in terms of your security. May Almighty Allah continue to enrich all of us in knowledge of our deen and make it easy for us to practice always. Here, this verse is pointing out another fact that has not been pointed out in the previous verses. As a rule in Islam, a year has 12 months, and it has pleased Almighty Allah to now single out 4 of those 12 months and call them Al-Ashhurul Hurum, the months in which hostility, war, battle are prohibited for Muslims. So we must even learn that we have certain months of the year in which we are not allowed to initiate a warfare. But as we have said, there are circumstances wherein Muslims may not have a choice than to fight. But when we have that choice to make, please note that it is part and parcel of the law of Islam to note that there are specific months, and they are 4 in number, in which you are not allowed to start to initiate even al-jihad in the name of Almighty Allah. Now, as we said yesterday, Islam is not leaving anything to chances, lest the opposing side will see that as an advantage, that, wait for them until it is the month of Rajab. Rajab is one of those 4 months, for instance. Do not attack them until when it is time that they are prohibited from fighting, and they will be helpless. It is not like that. That is why Allah is saying, Ash-shahrul haramu bish-shahril harami wal-hurumatu qisas. Ash-shahrul haramu bish-shahril haram. A month in which you are prohibited from fighting will be for another month in another year. Wal-hurumatu qisas. And prohibitions are reciprocal. Prohibition in this second sentence has come in a plural form for a reason and for a purpose. In this particular circumstance, Muslims, they had on that occasion prohibition of time, which is a month, precisely Dhul Qa'dah. The verse was revealed in the 11th month, which is one of the 4 sacred months in which fighting is prohibited. Not only that, don't forget, where were they? They were in the sacred place in Haram. That is prohibition number 2. Where you are in Haram, within the premises of Haram, as we read yesterday, وَلَا تُقَاتِلُوهُمْ عِنْدَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ حَتَّى يُقَاتِلُوكُمْ فِيهِ. So it makes 2 now. And what is the third? They are in a state of ihram, in a month of Haram, in a month of haram, ash-shahrul haram, in a place of haram, a sacred place, the haram of Mecca. And the third huruma that makes it look like, that the plural form is being used here, because they were also in a state of ihram. A state of ihram means certain things that were hitherto allowed, permissible for you, will become prohibited. And that is what we mean by being in a state of ihram, either with the intention of performing hajj or with the intention of performing umrah, as the case may be. So, wal-hurumatu qisas. All these prohibitions must be reciprocal, meaning that if they attack you in the month of haram, then you are also allowed to also do what? Attack them even in the month of haram. Should they choose to see you in ihram and say this is an advantage for us to attack them because they should not fight when they are in ihram? No. Prohibition must actually be what? Reciprocal. Should they think of taking advantage of you being within the premises of haram and attack you for that purpose? Al-hurumatu qisas. Prohibitions in this regard are actually reciprocal. If they choose not to respect all of these prohibitions, then you are also at liberty to suspend. You are not disrespecting the sanctity of the place, the sanctity of the time, and the sanctity of the status. But you are permitted to suspend all this for a while. Why? Because wal-hurumatu qisas. They must actually be reciprocal. And this is giving Muslim army the most needed protection and security. Nothing is being left. Nothing is being taken for granted. وَالْحُرُمَاتُ قِصَاصٌ. So therefore, فَمَنْ اعْتَدَى عَلَيْكُمْ. Whoever attacks you, i'tida means being aggressive, being hostile towards you. فَمَنْ اعْتَدَى, whoever shows hostility against you. وَمَنْ اعْتَدَى, whoever chooses to attack you, even despite the existence of any of these three circumstances. فَاعْتَدُوا عَلَيْهِ. You are at liberty. It is halal. It is allowed for you also to retaliate in aggression, to retaliate in attacking. Because, as said earlier, وَالْحُرُمَاتُ قِصَاصٌ. All these prohibitions must actually be reciprocal. فَاعْتَدُوا عَلَيْهِ بِمِثْلِ مَا اعْتَدَى عَلَيْكُمْ. Even in this one, this is another rule of engagement. As we said yesterday, this is the most humane rule of engagement in all military rules and affairs all over the world. That will even tell you, بِمِثْلِ مَا اعْتَدَى عَلَيْكُمْ. You have to retaliate in the same way. Don't transgress the limits. بِمِثْلِ. Mithil means similar. Retaliate, attack in the same way that they have chosen also to attack you. This is also corroborating what has been mentioned in a previous verse. وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا. Even when you are fighting an enemy, that does not give you an excuse of going beyond the acceptable limit. What can be more humane? What can conform further, better to human rights than this one? That even someone has come deliberately to attack you, you are only allowed to attack him back in a similar way, in a way that will not lead you to transgressing the limit. And one of the ways of transgressing the limit, as we pointed out yesterday, is to deliberately attack an innocent life. Is to deliberately attack an innocent life. It is never allowed in Islam. Please, let us learn our religion and let us behave always within the boundary of what is allowed. If truly we are serving the cause of Almighty Allah, then there should be no reason whatsoever for us to go in disobedience of His directives. فَاعْتَدُوا عَلَيْهِ بِمِثْلِ مَا اعْتَدَى عَلَيْكُمْ وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ. How will you be able to achieve all these? Is when you have the fear of Almighty Allah. And that is why it's coming closely after all these directives. It may be difficult for you to see someone that is aggressive and you have an upper hand over him. And there will be that temptation of going beyond the limit acceptable. But Allah is cautioning us here by saying, Wattaqullah. This is the bottom line. This should be the guiding principle. What will make it easy and possible for you, despite your human nature? It is part of the human nature that if anybody hits you, you will want to hit him or her harder. But Allah is telling you clearly, وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا اعْتَدَى فَاعْتَدُوا عَلَيْهِ بِمِثْلِ مَا اعْتَدَى. This may be difficult for you as a human being. But if you realize that it is Allah that orders you to do so, then we have to fear Him. We have to be obedient to Almighty Allah, your Creator. That is why it says, Wattaqullah. Fear Almighty Allah. Be conscious of your duty to Him. He created you and He has all the right to be obeyed. And you must never disobey Him in any of His directives. So, Wattaqullaha, fear Almighty Allah. If that is enough, Allah is telling us the reason, the more reason why we should have the fear of God at heart all the time. Is enough for you to know that it is your license to gaining the love of Almighty Allah. You want Almighty Allah to love you, this is the gateway of securing the love, the likeness of your Creator. Wattaqullaha wa'lamu, know annallaha ma'al muttaqin. That Almighty Allah is always with, in support of those who put His fear at heart all the time. We have explained in the past, but it may be necessary to repeat it here. Whenever you see the word ma'a in Al-Quran Al-Kareem or in the hadith of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, literally it means with. Almighty Allah is with you. Whenever you say so and so ma'a, it means they are together in a place. But in understanding these in relation to Almighty Allah, we need to be guided. How are we going to be rightly guided? Is to have a holistic, comprehensive understanding of the words of Almighty Allah, not in piecemeal. The problem today is that some people will choose to understand part of Al-Quran, interpret part of Al-Quran, and not minding the fact that there are other places that will guide your understanding in the same Al-Quran Al-Kareem. For example here, ulama have established it centuries ago that being with you in relation to Almighty Allah does not imply physical presence. Whenever you read or you hear or you are told, even in dua, in praying, sometimes we may say, may Allah be with you. May Allah be with you does not mean Allah will leave His place and be with you physically. If you have such an understanding, it is erroneous. It's part of the faith, part of the belief of Muslim, to know what is called al-ma'iyya, ma'iyyatullahi azza wa jal. Almighty Allah being with His creatures, mankind inclusive, never implies physical presence with you. And whoever is having such a belief should please, we are appealing to him to try and avoid that, because it is erroneous. It's a wrong understanding. It's a wrong interpretation of the words of Almighty Allah. Because in so many other verses, like I said, how are we going to be rightly guided in understanding this particular one? Is to juxtapose these with so many other verses of Al-Quran Al-Kareem and so many other hadith sayings of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Because why must you do that? They are all coming from one source and they can never contradict one another. But this is the danger. If you don't take that holistic approach in understanding the words of Almighty Allah, it will look like he says something here and says something there contradicting, and that will never happen. It is for you to have that comprehensive approach, and as Almighty Allah has always commanded us, by asking those who know. And that is why, please, let me emphasize here, mere knowledge of Arabic language is never enough to become a mufassir. We are in the month of Ramadan. People will like to do tafsir, to explain the meanings of words of Almighty Allah, which is very commendable. But please know that is why scholars of Islam, why did they have to write volumes upon volumes and name them tafsir? Whereas they were writing principally for native speakers of the Arabic language. Tafsir al-Tabari, Tafsir ibn Kathir, Tafsir al-Qurtubi, Tafsir al-Baghawi, Tafsir al-Jalalain, in most cases, they are Arabs. They were living among those who are equally native speakers. They were not writing for Nigerians. Neither were they writing for Europeans that, okay, let us explain because they don't understand Arabic language. No. They understood, they are native speakers of Arabic language. But the point that is being made there, that is being pressed home, in essence, is for you to know that the mere knowledge of language, Arabic language, is not sufficient to interpret the meanings of the word of Almighty Allah. And that is why ulama will say the best way of interpreting Al-Quran Al-Kareem is what we have just done, is to use Al-Quran to interpret Al-Quran. That is what they call Tafsir al-Qur'ani bil-Quran. Is the first class, is the highest level of tafsir, of interpreting the words of Almighty Allah. You will never go wrong. Just try to see what Allah is saying here, how it has been explained further in some other verses. Now, in this context, let us refer to some of those verses that explain clearly. Ma'a, inna Allaha ma'a. For example, in a verse of Al-Quran Al-Kareem, Allah says clearly, Ar-Rahman ala al-arsh istawa. Ar-Rahmanu ala al-arsh istawa. God, Ar-Rahman, the merciful, is on his throne, Al-Arsh. And where is Al-Arsh? Al-Arsh is far, far above, over the seven heavens. In another verse, the word heavens is even clearly mentioned. A'amintum man fis sama. A'amintum man fis sama. Who is in the heaven? Who is up? Almighty Allah. And this is what, Allahu Akbar, it is natural in every human being, that when you want to call on God, you will never look down. You will never look right. You will never look left. Where will you look to? It's natural. It's inbuilt. It's inbuilt, because that's exactly where he said he is, and that is where he is. But despite being on his throne, over and above the seven heavens, he's still with us. This is the meaning. Then how do you now combine the meanings of the two verses in a way that they will look compatible and not contradictory? This is what ulama have done. Oh, it means despite being there over and above the seven heavens, there is nothing that goes on anywhere in the universe, whether in the heavens or even on the earth, that he does not know about. That is the meaning of Ma'a. It's always with you with his knowledge. It's always with you with his support. This is part of the meaning of Ma'a. In our own normal language, we also say, I'm with you, even when you are far away. Somebody called you, because we have to say it graphically so that you can have good understanding of what we are saying. This is not strange, because when we say Ma'iyya, being with you of Almighty Allah does not imply physical presence. What does it imply? It implies being with you with his knowledge, It implies being with you, which is support and assistance. And that is why even you, as a human being, as a weak human being, weak creature of Almighty Allah, somebody may call you for assistance from far away UK, from far away Saudi Arabia. Oh, I'm having so good. Don't worry, I'm with you on this. I am with you on this. What do you mean by you are with him? Are you with him in the US? Are you with him in Saudi Arabia? You are with him, you are giving him what? Your support. This is the meaning of ma'a. Whenever you see ma'a being used in relation to Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَ الْمُتَّقِينَ. Almighty Allah is always with and support, aiding whoever is fearful, is conscious of his duties towards Almighty Allah. Now, وَأَنفِقُوا
وأنفقوا في سبيل الله ولا تلقوا بأيديكم إلى التهلكة وأحسنوا إن الله يحب المحسنين وأتموا الحج والعمرة لله فإن أحصرتم فما استيسر من الحج ولا تحلقوا رؤوسكم حتى يبلغ الحج محله فمن كان منكم مريضا أو به أذى من رأسه ففدية من صيام أو صدقة أو نسك فإذا أمنتم فمن تمتع بالعمرة إلى الحج فما استيسر من الحج فمن لم يجد فصيام 3 أيام في الحج و7 إذا رجعتم تلك 10 كاملة ذلك لمن لم يكن أهله
ذلك لمن
لم يكن أهله حاضر المسجد الحرام واتقوا الله واعلموا أن الله شديد العقاب.
حسبك. وأنفقوا في سبيل الله. وأنفقوا في سبيل الله. This is another directive from Almighty Allah. And as a Muslim, you must take your religion holistically, completely, not selecting what is pleasing to you, what you are comfortable with, what is convenient for you. You must take whatever directive, whatever command has come from your Creator Almighty Allah. This area, a lot of Muslims are actually failing in this regard that we are going to mention. وَأَنْفِقُوا is a command of Almighty Allah that you must be prepared to spend of what Allah has given you as resources in His cause. وَأَنْفِقُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. It's unfortunate today that the level of spending from our wealth, from our resources, at least when we are to compare ourselves with followers of other faith, we are always performing poorly. And you will be surprised. Let me give you practical examples. I've been to so many cities or certain cities in this country. What I want to tell you, if it is not that way in your environment, you can correct me. Any place I visited, and I will see a place, a house of God, being under construction for years, certainly it must be a mosque. Is it the same way with you? Why must it be like that? Go around, see. wherein they will contribute, today they have 200 blocks, tomorrow they are looking for 50 cement. Where are Muslims? And that is the house of God, for example. That shows, I was just trying to buttress the point I made so that it won't be an allegation or an unsubstantiated allegation. We need to assess ourselves, especially in this part of the world. Especially in this part of the world. Our attitude in spending of what Almighty Allah has given us is poor. Either given directly by way of spending on the houses of Almighty Allah. That one should even attract you. Now to talk of spending, Allah wants you also to spend in assisting your fellow human beings. How far are we doing that too? We mentioned the issue of zakat. How many people are paying zakat today? Zakat that is as little as 2.5%. and to be paid just once in a year. 2.5%. You will see a lot of Muslims creating many excuses to exempt themselves from the obligation of payment of zakat. Well, this is the truth. It's part of your religion to know that, yes, you pray, you fast, you go on Hajj, but you must also learn how to spend to aid the cause of Almighty Allah and to assist fellow human beings if they are in need, just for the sake of Almighty Allah. So, وَأَنْفِقُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. Here is talking about spending especially in aid of the religion of Almighty Allah, in whatever respect. Building mosque is one spectacular way of assisting and aiding the cause of Almighty Allah. When you go to so many places today, like I said, they will continue constructing a house of God, masjid, for years. Out of their mega salaries, contributing 50 naira, 100, and you have the resources that can say, stop there. How much do you need to complete this place of God? This house of Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala. In so many ways, you can hate the cause of Islam. Even when you look at it from the angle of rescuing Muslims from the threat of being driven out of Islam, is a way of aiding the cause of Islam. A lot of people are being led out of Islam today, not because of any other thing, but because of economic reasons, because of economic factors. They promise them they will give them employment. They promise them they will give them job. So you can also come in to say, I will make sure that at least 1, 2, 3, 4 to the best of my ability. If for the reason of economic factor, you have nothing to fear. Job opportunity, creating an avenue for Muslim children to learn skills, to be educated. Education today has become a weapon. It has always been a weapon used against Muslims of this country for so long a time. We mentioned, was it yesterday, we mentioned the case of Chief Richard Akinjide. Was it yesterday or before yesterday? There are many Richards Akinjide that, because they went to a school, they were taken out of the fold of Islam. It's a way of aiding the cause of Almighty Allah to say, if because of school, I will establish one, or I will support an existing one, wherein Muslims will be educated and will have no fear of losing their faith. I'm just giving instances and examples. You can also think of any way, fi what? Sabilillah. Fi sabilillah does not end in giving a beggar, because of people do not understand fi sabilillah, except when he hears or he sees a beggar going to give him or her 200 naira, 100 naira. That is not all. Fi sabilillah depends on your own status, depends on your own level, depends on the amount of resources at your disposal. So please, let us learn this as being part and parcel of of our religion. We should be eager because of so many reasons. When you give Almighty Allah 1,000 naira, He will replenish it in tenfold. He has promised you and He will fulfill His promise. The Prophet ﷺ in another hadith said, for every single day, Allah sends 2 angels. Every single day. What are they doing? He said, one will be saying, Allahumma a'ti munfiqan khalafa wa a'ti mumsikan talafa. Every single day, there are 2 angels praying in 2 directions. One will be saying, oh Almighty Allah, whoever has given out of his or our resources, Allah, please replenish it. Replace it for him or her. Khalafa. Replenish it. Replace it. Wa'ati mumsikan talafa. And whoever withholds what Allah has given to him, pretending not to have when he really has. And there are people in need of him to assist them. Genuinely, we are talking of genuine need. Because what has become the practice today, every society you go to, beggars are Muslims. That is not what Islam promoted. We must talk on both hands, in both directions. Encouraging people to assist those who are in need does not mean people should be lazy. People should not learn trade to earn a living. But genuinely, you have some people, as they are described even in Al-Quran Al-Karim, that they are even shy. They will hesitate to even ask you. There are categories of people like that. Go and assist them. If you don't want to assist those who are, some people are greedy, some people are not, they don't have, they are not contented also with whatever Allah has given them. All of us cannot become billionaire. It's impossible for all of us to become millionaire. So if what Allah has given you in your own destination is to have a single room, do not plan by begging in order to build a mansion. It's haram. If your own destiny is not to ride in a private car, going to beg to achieve that is haram. So please, on both sides, those who are wealthy enough to spend, especially when it has to do with sustaining the faith of people. This is a big factor, especially in this part of the world today. Others are ready to use economic factor, financial factor, job opportunities, whatever, educational opportunities to persuade people to abandon their faith. If you are able to stabilize them on their faith, you are aiding the cause of Almighty Allah. People don't have a place to pray as masjid. You build one for them. And so many other ways that you can think of, supporting in whatever way the cause of Almighty Allah. Allah is ordering you, is commanding you to do. وَأَنْفِقُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَلَا تُلْقُوا بِأَيْدِيكُمْ إِلَى التَّهْلُكَةِ. Do not throw yourself. بِأَيْدِيكُمْ, Allah uses here your hands to represent your whole body. It appears in some verses like that Allah will choose to use a part of the body, but the intention is to refer to the entire body. Here, the generality of Mufassirun agreed on this, that here, وَلَا تُلْقُوا بِأَيْدِيكُمْ, do not throw your hands. It means do not throw yourselves into destruction deliberately. How do you throw yourself into destruction? In so many ways. And that is what I said. Mere knowledge of Arabic language is not sufficient in interpreting the words of Almighty Allah. You may think here that, okay, you throw yourself into destruction by committing suicide. That is the clearest way of saying, oh, he has thrown himself into destruction. But that is not the intention here. That one has also been addressed in many other authorities of Sharia, Quran and Hadith. But the intention here, this particular verse, we have it on authority of many companions of the Prophet ﷺ, that what was meant in throwing yourselves into destruction is actually relating to what preceded this sentence by refusing to spend to aid the cause of Almighty Allah. That is one meaning. The other meaning is by refusing when it is necessary to embark on jihad, by finding flimsy excuses not to partake, is also a way of throwing yourselves into destruction. Or refusing, as we said, directly relating to the previous sentence. When all of you choose not to spend in the cause of Almighty Allah, you're actually throwing yourselves into destruction unknowingly. So Allah is warning us against all instances of throwing oneself deliberately, knowingly, into destruction. Why I said we have it on authority of many companions, let me mention one. Many companions of the Prophet ﷺ. Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, a very famous companion of the Prophet ﷺ, he interpreted this verse from the knowledge he got from the teacher of all teachers, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in order for us to have correct understanding of this verse. He said, this verse was actually revealed when, after we have gone through so many persecutions, we have fought so many wars, and we now felt now there is no problem. We have become victorious. And he said, all of a sudden, all of us went back to our farms, to our businesses, to our trades, and forgot that there are still some threats. The religion of Allah may still be threatened in some ways. He said it was at that point that Almighty Allah revealed this particular verse, that your action of completely forgetting, hating the cause of Almighty Allah because you are occupied, you are busy with your trade, you are busy with your farm, you are busy with your business, is actually a way of throwing yourselves unknowingly or knowingly into what? Into destruction. Almighty Allah preserve us. وَلَا تُلْقُوا بِأَيْدِيكُمْ إِلَى التَّهْلُكَةِ وَأَحْسِنُوا, and do good. Do good to yourself. Do good to others. Yes, doing good does not mean to others alone. You have to do good to your own self too. And in a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, look at how he described al-ihsan, especially when you have to do good to your own self. He said, أَن تَعْبُدَ اللَّهَ كَأَنَّكَ تَرَاهُ فَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ تَرَاهُ فَإِنَّهُ يَرَاكَ. You are doing good to yourself. You worship Almighty Allah properly. Whom are you benefiting? It's your own self. He said, ihsan is to worship Almighty Allah as if you are seeing Him. Because even if you don't see Him, know certainly that He sees you. But we all know somebody will behave himself if you know he's being observed, isn't it? Then the Prophet is advising us that you should try to put yourself at that level of always being conscious of Almighty Allah, as if you are also looking at Him. Oh, this is Allah watching me how I pray. Even when I locked my door upon myself, oh, this is Allah seeing me, even in this darkness. Then you will fear Him. But know that even though it is impossible for you to see Him, He certainly sees you. So it's part of ihsan. In fact, it's a major way of ihsan, because the Prophet described ihsan in that way. So that is why I said, ahsinu, do good, not only to others, but even to your own self. And do good to others, as we have been saying. Do good to your relatives. Do good to your neighbors. Do good to your colleagues. Do good to your co-workers. Do good to whoever comes across you or whoever you have anything to do with him. Even if he or she is a non-Muslim, project your religion in a good light. Let them see you as a worthy ambassador of your religion. I always tell people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through the Prophet, sent the Prophet to tell us something, but it has an implication. He said, the best thing you can achieve in this life is what? Is for Allah to use you in guiding another person. That is the best thing you can achieve in life. خَيْرٌ لَكَ مِنْ حُمُرِ النَّعَمِ. If it is on account of your behavior, on account of your sayings, on account of your attitude, on account of your assistance, somebody says, I would like to follow your religion. This your religion is good. Oh. It's the best for you. Now tell me, in reverse, what will be the worst thing to happen to one in life? We can infer that from the same hadith. Can you tell me? It's for someone to run away from Islam because of you. Because you have become a bad ambassador of your religion. And a lot of things happen today. People will say it clearly. If this is your religion, I pray I will never follow it. If this is what your religion teaches you, because you have showed worst examples of yourself, you misrepresented Islam. So it's a double-edged instrument. When you be a factor that leads another to Islam, that is the best thing for you in the sight of Almighty Allah. But think of it the other way around. Imagine you are the one that someone saw, you had a dealing with someone, you had a business with him, you cheated him. And he said, oh, so this is how you Muslims are? Because you misrepresented your religion. So please, let us take note of this. Do good to yourself. This is what we are explaining. These are some of the instances, ways of doing good to your own self. You will be the beneficiary of that. But yet, do good to others. Why? Inna Allaha yuhibbul muhsinin. Allah always loves those who do good. Allah loves those who do good. It's enough for you. You think it's a minor thing to achieve the love of Almighty Allah? It's not a minor thing. It's one of the best things to happen to you. One of the best things in life, to secure the love of your Creator. If Allah loves you, let anybody go to hell and hate you. They can never harm you. So Allah is telling us here, this is one way, sure way of attaining that status, of gaining the love, the likeness of your Creator, by always doing what? Doing good. Inna Allaha yuhibbul muhsinin. Almighty Allah make it easy and possible for all of us to always do good. Do good to ourselves and do good to others. Be good ambassadors of our religion, that others will see and say, is this what your religion taught you? Oh, this is what our religion taught us. This is a good religion. But don't be the other way around. It also has an implication on you. So, Inna Allaha yuhibbu al-muhsinin. Almighty Allah truly loves every person that does good, either a male or female. Almighty Allah count us among those who shall always do good and be rewarded for so doing. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.
Is it possible tomorrow?
Let's address questions first. Okay. What is the first question?
Okay, the first question said, it's a lady, she said, can a lady pray Eid prayer in her house by herself if she finds no Eid ground? This is the first question. Did I read the second?
Okay.
Okay, the second question here is it compulsory for a lady to go to Eid? I think it's about the same question but in different ways. Will Allah reward her if she prays Eid at home?
Okay.
How can we use Habbatul Sauda for a kid? That's the fourth one.
Alhamdulillah. So the first question says, can a lady, no, this is not the first one. Can a lady pray Eid?
Yes,
it's the first one.
Yes.
Can a lady pray Eid in her house by herself if she finds no Eid ground? Okay. May Almighty Allah spare our lives until beyond the Eid day.
Amen.
Eid day is just a limited number of days away from us.
Yes.
We ask him to spare our lives.
Amen.
This apparently is coming from a lady. And the question is, we know we go out to pray. First and foremost, let us know that the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is to go out to Eid, wherever Eid is being performed. To the extent that even those women that are menstruating or are still in postnatal bleeding, haid or nifas, ordinarily they will not pray, they will not observe prayer. It is still recommended for them to go out with the congregation. So that is basic. But as she said here, if she couldn't find, maybe the nearest one is very far away and she cannot afford to go there. So then this question will become relevant. But please, if there are in your neighborhood, not too far, and in a secured environment, endeavor to go out on Eid day. That is the recommendation of the Prophet. Even if you are not praying, it's still recommended for you to go out. In fact, to the extent that the Prophet, some women, when he said, all of you must go out for Eid, some of them came to seek permission that we couldn't go. We couldn't go. Why? Because we did not have jilbab. They didn't have what? Jilbab. It shows that even from the time of the Prophet ﷺ, Muslim women, when they go out, they must cover up. This is very clear in this hadith. They came to explain their excuse of not being able to go out for Eid. Why? Were they sick? They were not sick. They were healthy enough. But they said, because we can't afford the kind of jilbab or hijab that the Prophet did not even allow them to stay behind. Do you know what he directed on that day? That those of you women that have 2-3 jilbab or 2-3 hijab should give them one on that day so that they will go out. It shows how highly recommended it is for the generality of Muslims to go out for it. It's highly recommended. If it is not, the Prophet would have said, okay, you don't have jilbab, stay back. Oh, you are menstruating? No, don't go. No. Said everybody, even menstruating woman, a woman in her postnatal bleeding, a woman that has no jilbab should seek assistance from her sister. But upon all this, if truly it is impossible for you to get an Eid praying ground, can you observe your Eid in your own house? The answer is yes. Because it is recorded that one of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, Anas ibn Malik radiyallahu anhu, that was a companion that lived most part of his adult life with the Prophet ﷺ. As young as a boy of 10 years old, he has been living in the household of the Prophet ﷺ. So he knew the Prophet in and out, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So Anas, after the Prophet ﷺ of old age, it was reported that once he came to the Eid praying ground and met people, they have already completed the Eid Salat. They were already departing. Then all what he did was to gather his own family members, returned back home, and they observed their own Eid. So that is the basis for which ulama would say, if you have an excuse, if you have any good reason, it's not prohibited for you, either as a family or as an individual, to also observe your own Eid in your various houses. But please note again, it is highly, highly recommended to go out with Muslims and pray in an Eid praying ground. The second question, is it compulsory for a lady to go to Eid? It's not compulsory, but as we said, it's highly, highly recommended. It's highly recommended. And you have seen in what we mentioned, to the point of even if you are menstruating, it shows how serious the matter is. Will Allah reward her if she prays Eid at home? We've answered that. How can we use Habbat as-Sauda for a kid? I will advise you that we have people who specialize in prophetic medicine. I am not one of them. We have people who are specialists in how to go about doing prophetic medicine. It has become a field of knowledge today. So I believe in any city, in any community, you will see some of them, but make sure you find out about those who are authentic practitioners, because people are also taking advantage of people and telling all sorts of stories they don't know anything about. But I believe strongly there are trustworthy, reliable practitioners of the prophetic medicine. They are the one that will answer such a question, and I'm not one of them. So any other? Alaykum salam. Okay, let's start from you, then you. Okay, now. Praying Eid at home? Yes. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. We said women, even when they are menstruating, are recommended also to go out. Now the question is, would they pray? The answer is no. A menstruating woman does not pray. It's haram for her to pray. But just to go out and witness the gathering, that is what the Prophet said. So it's a very good one. Thank you very much. So that somebody will not misunderstand that. That they said we can pray. No, you don't. The Prophet ﷺ said they won't pray, but they must come out with the congregation of Muslims on an Eid day. Thank you very much. Now, another one from this angle. Okay, now. Okay. Okay. In this hadith of Anas bin Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala, it is not clearly stated that he actually delivered the khutbah, but he prayed Eid the same way it is prayed in the praying ground with all the takbirat. So it may not be necessary, especially when you alone or you are with your family members. I don't think it will be necessary to have a member and start doing a khutbah. More so, the khutbah of Eid is not does not have the same rule and status with the khutbah of Jummah. And that is why the Prophet will announce on Eid day that we have completed Salatul Eid. Anybody that wants to leave can leave. It is not even compulsory for people to stay behind and listen to the khutbah of Eid. As different from the khutbah of Jummah. It's part of Salat. So that is why I said it may not be necessary for you to embark on khutbah, but pray exactly as you will do if you happen to be with an imam in the praying ground. Wallahu a'lam. Now, Nah.
Some of the objections of some scholars is there is some hadith that said that the Rasul
Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam
said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to come down in the night.
Nah.
That's portion of the night. So how do you some places it can be daytime down here and other places of the world night time. So
Yes.
how
How do you justify coming down of Almighty Allah as reported in the hadith? First of all, you have to believe in this because it was said by a prophet of Allah. That should be basic. Now, the problem here is very, very simple to solve. And it has been solved more than 1,000 years ago. It depends on our methodology. Let me give you a story, and you should be able to pick the answer from that story. But if you are unable, tell me, I will further elaborate. In the time of our Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala, Imam Malik was sitting in the Prophet Mosque, teaching people religion. And a man came to ask a question. And what was the question? Looks like this question. He said, Ya Imam, O you Imam, Ar-Rahmanu ala al-arshi istawa, kayfa istawa. Ar-Rahman ala al-arshi istawa, kayfa istawa. We've read it in Al-Quran that Allah is on his al-arsh, his throne. How? The man was asking Malik what? How? Can you describe to us the form, the shape, the mode? That was the question put to Malik. And the answer given by Malik has become what scholars all over the world today are relying upon to answer such a question, and will continue until the day of resurrection. Malik, a guided servant of Almighty Allah, rahimahullah. In answering this question, he said, Al-istiwa'u ma'lum. Al-istiwa'u ma'lum. Wal-kayfu majhul. Was-su'alu anhu bid'ah. In 3 sentences. Al-istiwa'u ma'lum. Wal-kayfu majhul. Was-su'alu anhu bid'ah. What's the meaning of these 3 sentences? When we hear the word istawa, to be on a throne, is not strange as a meaning in Arabic language. Malik was telling that man, you and I know the meaning of saying someone is on his throne. But what you are looking for is unknown to me and you. You are looking for how does Almighty Allah how he is on his throne. This is not known, and it's not known to any creature of Almighty Allah. And the third one, and asking question about how does Almighty Allah does, how does Almighty Allah do, how does Almighty Allah talk, how does Almighty Allah come down, how does Almighty Allah see, how does Almighty Allah hear, is condemnable innovation in religion. It's condemnable. This is the story, and I think it has answered your question. But I will add something. Because it's an error that we shouldn't allow people to create doubt in the minds of Muslims. Some people may come and say, you see now, your religion is ambiguous. You cannot even explain how. You cannot even explain what? How the attribute, the qualities of your God. What are you telling me? This is part of those Orientalists. This is part of what they did and misled so many gullible minds. The answer is very simple. Scholars will tell us and will give us practical examples that how is a function of knowing who, or maybe a function of having sinned, or be a function of having experienced. You can never tell how of anything in the world unless you have had any of these 3 experiences. Either you have met him, either you have seen him, either you have touched him. That is when you can now say this is how he is. And all these 3 do not apply to our God. Nobody has ever seen him. Nobody has ever touched him. Nobody has ever met him. So it is easy, it's natural for us not to be able to tell how. One of the great scholars of Islam from this Africa, Sheikh Muhammad al-Amin Shinkiti of blessed memory, rahimahullah, from Mauritania in Africa, one of the most knowledgeable people of his time. He died in Mecca in 1973. He will give an example like this. Listen. He said, let me use you as an example. You are from where? From Jos here. Good. Fantastic. You know Lagos? Have you ever been to Lagos? You know Kaduna? Have you ever been to Kaduna? Good. What's your name? Uthman. Uthman, I will ask you a question. There is and AbdulRazzaq in Kaduna. One AbdulRazzaq is in Kaduna. Please describe him to me. I know of one AbdulRazzaq in where? In Kaduna. And you have been to Kaduna many times. Please describe for me that AbdulRazzaq that I have in mind who is in Kaduna. What will you say? I've never seen him.
But I believe he exists.
But he exists. Just like you must believe that Allah exists, but you have never seen him. And naturally, you should not be able to tell. Is that okay? I think we have to stop here.
So, do we have Tafsir tomorrow?
Let's discuss that one later. Welcome, Malam Farouk. Unfortunately, we are at the point of closing where you entered. So what we understand the schedule of your duty has been the closest aid to the DG. May Allah be with you. If you have a question, we can entertain your question. Okay, alhamdulillah. So we thank Almighty Allah for giving us this opportunity and we ask Him for more. Wa sallallahu wa sallim wa barik ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.
Shukran, Dr. Sheikh.
Of course.